Hello everyone, this is like take 3 of these. I was unable to upload the video that I had all ready for today. So here we go again, Monday morning, give it another shot. This is the last set of lit terms cards. Situational irony. An event happens that is not expected. This is just what I call regular irony. Soliloquy. It's going to be in drama where a speaker thinks out loud. Be sure that you can tell the difference between a soliloquy and an aside. Static character. A character that does not change. They don't have to be negative or positive. They can be either one. It doesn't have to be a protagonist, just any character whose personality, whose actions, whose moral background, all of that is the same from beginning to end. Stream of consciousness. And this is a technique that an author uses to reproduce the exact flow of thoughts of a character. I would say The Yellow Wallpaper, the short story by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, is an excellent example of stream of consciousness. Plus, stream of consciousness generally just sounds weird whenever you're reading it because you're inside somebody's head. Stock character. And it's just a stereotypical character. You might call a stock character a villain or a bully or the quiet one or what used to be called a wallflower or somebody who wouldn't get involved in something. Those would all be stock or stereotypical characters. Substitution. The replacement of an expected metrical foot by a different one. So obviously this is only going to be in poetry, and it would be in a poem that, say, used iambic pentameter, except for maybe 1 or 2 lines where they switched gears a little bit. And sometimes when that happens in, say, a sonnet, we might call it an almost sonnet as opposed to a sonnet if it doesn't exactly follow the rules for one. Syllabic verse. Verse or lines of poetry measured by syllables rather than number of feet per line. Remember, a foot is going to have usually 2 syllables, accented or unaccented, and it can also sometimes have 3 syllables. But if you're just looking at the syllables instead of whether it has a pattern or a rhythm, then you're looking at syllabic verse. A syllogism is a system of logic using 2 premises. So usually when you use a syllogism, it's a flawed kind of logic. So here's what I came up with about cats, of course. Cats have fur. Oscar is a cat, so he has fur. And obviously that's an assumption you can't make about everything. Symbol. Anything that stands for or represents something else. Keep symbols separate from motifs. Synesthesia. Notice the phonetics there for you. Oops, looks like I forgot to give you the exact definition. Be that back for that one in just a bit. We'll just put this card aside and I'll catch it at the end of the video. Synecdoche. The part stands for the whole. Best example, to say 50 head of cattle for a herd, or rather than saying 50 cows or 50 cows in the herd, or to call it wheels for a car. Be sure to keep synecdoche separate from metonymy. Those are the 2 that get mixed usually. Syntax is the way the author chooses to join words or phrases into groups of writing. So syntax is just the structure of a sentence, whether it be simple, compound, complex. Terza Rima, I remember I was mentioning this the other day. This will only be in poetry, and it's a form of interlocking rhyme. Like, for example, where it's ABA, then BCB, then CDC, etc. Terza Rima is really popular in times of sonnets, so say the 16th, 17th century, and then it became really popular again with Romantic poets, the very early 19th century. Theme. You should know this one like the back of your hand, but it's the central idea or moral of a work. Just keep in mind a theme is going to be more like a phrase or a sentence. To have a single word for a theme is more a motif. Let's stay away from single word themes. Tone is just the author's attitude. So you guys seem to confuse tone and mood often. So tone is what the author of the work thinks about what it is that they are writing, and then mood is the surrounding atmosphere of a work. So the tone would be more the language that they choose and characters choose, whereas mood would be the setting and whatever they use to set up the story. Sorry, slight interruption. I'm back. Oops, traditional verse. And this is poetry that employs meter and rhyme. So verse is always going to be poetry. And then I think probably when you think of poems, most people think, oh, poems rhyme. But you know that probably less than half of poems rhyme. So just keep in mind that traditional verse is going to be poetry that does rhyme and does have a rhythm and a meter to it. An unreliable narrator is a first person where they have inexperience or their subjectivity leads us to question the validity of their story. So an unreliable narrator, it might be a child that's telling a story. There's a book by Faulkner called The Sound and the Fury, which is the same story told by 4 different narrators, and one of the narrators is mentally handicapped. Benny, I think it's his first name. And so in that case, he would be an unreliable narrator because of the background or the age of the speaker. You could also say, by the way, an unreliable narrator could be someone who's ill, or maybe in the middle of an accident as well, so that you couldn't exactly tell if the story they're telling you is 100% truthful or, on target for them. Verbal irony. It's a contrast between what is really said and what is meant. Keep in mind you've got verbal irony, which is going to be spoken irony. You have situational irony, which again, I'll just call regular irony. And you have dramatic irony, where you, the reader, or you, the audience, know something that the character or the actors or actresses in the play do not. A Villanelle. It's a kind of poem. It is a French poem. It has 19 lines. They don't have to be written in French, though, obviously. 19 lines, which contains 5 triplets, 1 quatrain of 4 lines, and then a repeated line. And voice is the the presence of the author in a literary work, meaning you can just sense that the person is there. And one I can think of is if you were in language with Miss Miller last year, you may have read an essay called A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. And it's the one where he was proposing that, if they don't want to feed starving children, that you should then just eat babies or allow parents to sell their babies. Obviously, he didn't mean that for real. But because of his frustration with the poverty that was going on in Ireland at the time, he wrote that essay. And so that itself is very much you feel Jonathan Swift in the essay itself. Pause for just a second.